Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 111 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am your host once again, Brent Coley, an educator in beautiful Southern California. Joining me today, who's currently in Southern California, out here doing some speaking. I'm really excited about the conversation. Allyson Apsey. Allyson, how are you doing today?
I am also excited. I mean, it's not that sunny right now, but I love spending time in California, and I am spending a lot of time in California lately.
It was a little sunny today. It's going to be raining again tomorrow and the next day. And if you've been out here, it's been very, very wet recently, which again, people in the Midwest and back east are just like, cry me a river, Brent. Suck it up. It's not that bad. But for Southern California, it's cold and it's wet. We're not used to this as much.
All this time in California, I would love to have it be sunny California.
Yeah, it's a nice place to live. I enjoy it. But well, I'm excited about our conversation. I reached out to you because I've followed your work for a while, but you had posted something recently that really prompted me to say, gosh, I really want to talk to her on the podcast. But before we jump into that, if you would, kind of for anyone who's not followed your work up to this point, give us a little background, like who is Allyson? How did you get into education? What are you currently doing, etc.?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of serendipity about how I got into education, a little happy accident that happened, ironically, in that I was in college studying business and one of my courses got canceled and I had to fill it with an educational psychology class. And I was the only person in there who didn't want to be a teacher because I hated school. Graduated from high school, I'm like, I don't know what I want to be, but I don't want to be a teacher because I never want to step foot back in there again. But I didn't know what to do. So I went to our local community college and I had to do some volunteer work in a classroom. And I looked at these little first grade faces and I thought, oh, you poor creatures, you have like 12 years of torture ahead of you. You have no idea. You're so excited right now, but they're going to like beat that excitement out of you over the course of the next 12 years. And I'm just one of those people that if I see a change that needs to happen in the world, then I want to be that change. And that started, at a young age. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to become a teacher because I'd like at least 1 year of their career to be one where they feel seen and valued and really invested and engaged in their education. So I became a teacher.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I think we need what you just said. I'm sure there's a lot of head nodding for it. It's like, that's what we need. I mean, I wish everybody had all 12 years of somebody like what you just said, where they can feel seen, feel safe, feel loved. And then did you make your way into administration as well?
That was another happy accident. Oh. Actually, it was pretty early in my teaching career. My principal at the time, we needed another administrator. I helped open a charter school and we were growing at such a significant rate. Things were going well. I was a teacher leader. So it was just kind of a natural progression. I never saw myself as a principal, but I just spent the past 19 years of my life being a principal of all levels. So I started out as a junior high principal, then I became a high school principal, and then I moved about 2 hours away from where I was principaling and became an elementary principal. And I just finished up, my 19th year as a principal.
My story was very similar in that I never thought I would be. People say, oh, you want to be a principal someday? And it was kind of like, are you drunk? No, no, I would have bet every cent in my bank. Absolutely not. But kind of going back to what you had said, I remember the day that somebody asked, why do you want to be a principal, when I had decided, and it was because I'm tired of, you mentioned change. And you wanting to be part of the change. And I remember my quote was like, I'm tired of hearing that's just the way it is. And not that I'm going to solve single-handedly the world's problems, but kind of like you said, if I can give my students 1 year of a safe, seen, loving environment. I was like, well, maybe I can make a little difference, and it doesn't have to be that way. So that's kind of how I went into the administration side of things. But you recently wrote something, and kind of you've written a book, and we'll have you've written multiple books, and I liked how you squeezed a little serendipity in there. Very, very.
It's everywhere. Serendipity everywhere.
Exactly, and not by accident. But we'll have you talk a little bit more about that in a second. But you wrote a post recently out there that was called "Principals You Don't Need to Be an Instructional Leader," which on the surface was like, wait, what? Because again, as a site leader, you've been a site leader, I've been a site leader. It's like, whoa, but we're always told you need to be an instructional leader. So when you read the article, it's like 100% I agree with what you said. But give me a little, and for anyone listening who's right now thinking like, what? You don't need to be an instructional leader. Give us this a little Cliff Notes version of what you're talking about there.
Yes. So the post was prompted because I work with principals across the country now. I've stepped out of the principal role, and now I'm a leadership coach and a PLC coach, and in addition to writing and speaking. And principals are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, like trying to do all of the things. And I see them pulled from buildings for professional development on instructional practices. I see them doing everything but getting into classrooms, honestly. I mean, I feel like you can relate. I feel like any principal out there is nodding their head. The reality is principals cannot be the experts in every pedagogy of every grade level, of every content level. And I'd like us all to stop trying to pretend that we can be. What we need to do as leaders or principals is know enough about the content, instructional practices to be able to ask good questions, to know who to turn to as experts. And if I was reading a PLC book by a team of people, including Mike Matos and Rick DeFore. And in there, I love how they talk about that we need to stop trying to be leaders by adjective. Like, let's just be administrators or principals. We don't even need to call ourselves leaders. We can call it, call yourself whatever you want, but you don't need to be a leader by adjective, because really what we need to do is be effective leaders overall. So part of that effective leadership overall is we're a cultural leader. We're a community leader. We are a discipline leader. We are all of these things. So I just my goal was to relieve principals of some pressure and give them, like, if you want to be a leader by adjective, how about we are collective teacher efficacy leaders? Because we know through Hattie's research that has the biggest impact on student achievement. So I'm seeing principals not in classrooms, not able to be in classrooms, not able to be at team meetings, and being pulled from buildings for professional development and instructional practices, when really the place they need to be is classrooms and in team meetings first. And then you can fill in the gaps. But additionally, I think if principals are going to be doing any professional learning on instructional practices, it should be right alongside their teachers, not separate from teachers, so that we're learning and growing together. So, I mean, that is basically the premise of the article. But it was funny because a few sentences in, I said, superintendents, curriculum directors, please don't stop reading.
Don't stop reading, yeah.
And I had a curriculum director say, Allyson, you must have known exactly when to put that sentence in, because I was about to stop reading and I read that and I'm like, okay, I'll keep reading. And in the end, it's best practices for leadership, for school leadership, that are incorporated into the article.
Yeah, as I was reading it, I didn't stop reading. I kept reading because I think I knew where she's probably going, and fortunately I was correct. But you mentioned reflective questions, like at being able to ask the right questions, and I think you write about how DeFore and I can't remember if it was Morris, but somebody had written about like the Spanish example. If you're not a Spanish teacher, in terms of instructionally leading the Spanish teacher, I think like when you don't even know what they're saying in class, you're walking into a class and they're completely conversing in Espanol and you don't know what they're saying, it's hard. How do you do that? And as you were talking there, it reminded me, it's like I was for 9 years the principal of an elementary school. I never taught kindergarten. I was always for 15 years, I taught upper grades, 4th and 5th grade. So going into a kindergarten classroom, I couldn't pretend like, oh yeah, well, I know everything there is to know about kindergarten, because I didn't. But I loved what you said, like, but if I'm in there and I'm observing and I'm able to ask questions that would make the teacher reflect on his or her own practices, now that's where the growth, that's where the growth, you don't have, I think you said it so well, you don't have to be the expert in everything. You can't.
Right.
You can't be the expert in everything, especially like you said, you were a high school principal. How many different departments and classrooms and subject matter? It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So.
Right. And I'm not a science teacher. Like I'm not an expert in biology instruction. I can't even unpack single-handedly the rigor of the standards to make sure that what we're asking of students is aligned with the rigor of the standards. I would have to do that alongside a teacher. Like I'm not the expert in that area.
Yeah, I remember, and I loved what you said about learning alongside the teachers. I mean, looking back, it's like I didn't do that enough. Just being I did not do that enough, but I do recall one of the trainings we had got new curriculum adopted in English language arts. And I remember sitting with my kindergarten team, learning, like literally like sponging it up, like along with them. And I was learning probably more than they were learning about it because it was kindergarten. And it was, I'm not well versed in the kindergarten standards yet. So to be able to sit right there with them, ask them questions when I had them. Plus, I also think it shows teachers, oh, he doesn't know everything. He's not pretending to know everything because, spoiler alert, teachers know that their principals don't know everything. So we shouldn't pretend that we do, because teachers are kind of smart people. They understand that we don't know everything.
They're on to us. They are on to us.
Yes. So, and you have written about, and I know that you passionately believe about leading the whole teacher or leading. So like if you're listening to this and you're a site administrator, you're leading the whole teacher. And if you're a classroom teacher, you're tasked to lead the whole student. Whoever you're leading, we're leading the whole person. Can you talk a little, like, what do you mean when you say that, like leading the whole teacher or the whole person?
Right. So the premise of the book, Leading the Whole Teacher, is really based around 6 different pillars of the whole teacher. And it's designed to be a framework that we can use in our schools for action plans, really kind of self-reflection, or group reflection, and then action plans for how to create an environment where teachers feel whole, seen, and valued. Just like we were talking about, we want students to feel whole, seen, and valued. So it was a lot of scholarly research, just research on what are best practices in schools to create environments where there's a deep level of teacher satisfaction, teacher retention, but also just workplaces in general. And what do employees look for in workplaces where they want to stay and they feel like they can grow and thrive? So do you want me to share the 6 pillars?
Please, go for it. Yes.
I always get afraid that I'm going to forget one of them, but I think I got them down. So valued educators is one. Continual learners in ways that teachers want to grow and learn, not just ways that districts or schools think they should. A seat at the decision-making table.
Yeah.
A healthy workload. emotional safety, and positive relationships.
Wow.
So when I share that with, I knew I hit the right 6 when I shared them with teachers, and I could see like this visible relaxing, like their shoulders just drop, and they're like, yes, if I had a school environment where all 6 of those were in place, I would have a school environment where I could thrive, where I would definitely stay. And everywhere I go, there's strengths in one more of those pillars. But really what it does is give a framework to look at, like, where are our strengths and where might be some next steps. And the book, Leading the Whole Teacher, dives into each of the pillars, but then also gives like real life application about like, okay, if we look, how can we create these environments where educators feel valued? How might we even use the teacher evaluation system to contribute to that instead of take away from teachers feeling valued?
Yeah. Wait, you mean the teacher evaluation system's flawed? Is that, no, I'm kidding.
I know that was sarcastic.
just a smidge. Yes. So, well, you wrote about in the blog post too, like your first pillar is like valued. Mm-hmm. Do you have, like, you wrote about walkthroughs, for example, how to use the positive, how you can use classroom walkthroughs positively. Can you share about the, again, I can piggyback on that with a personal experience for me. Like, what do you mean when I say walkthroughs for positives and not gotchas?
Okay. So I'll just stick to the positives, but because I think you'll probably give the example maybe of the negative. But so just using any opportunity that we have to connect with teachers, to empower them through their strengths, and to ask them about, what are your goals and what are your next steps? What are you working on? What's the impact that's having on student learning? But for walkthroughs, like, what if we have the singular purpose of leaving a handwritten note about a positive we see, and we can make that even more impactful by sharing like a cause and effect statement. So here's what I saw, and here's the positive impact it had on students. So not just, I like the way but really thinking about the action that we saw, and then the result that it had in whether it was student engagement or student output or student achievement. What was the impact?
Yeah. I love how you provided wait time when you asked Susan that question. You gave her time to think, and when she came up with the answer, you had already turned around, but I saw her face absolutely light up. There's your cause and effect. You gave her time for wait time. Boom. You didn't see it, but I did. I want to let you know how awesome that was. Yeah, I am so 1,000% in agreement with the walkthroughs for the positives. I mean, obviously, if you're coming in and somebody's asleep at their desk or doing something that they we're going to document that in a different way. We're going to have a different conversation in a different way. But if you can turn the whole walkthrough process on its head and make it a positive, like the handwritten notes, the Post-its, because I'm sure I know that you have seen this. What happens to those notes that you leave?
They're up for eternity.
Yeah.
Teachers' cabinets, on their refrigerators at home, they keep them forever.
Yeah. They don't find their way to the trash. I mean, I found a Post-it once. I was talking with one of our teachers, and I remember I looked at her computer monitor, and there was it was 5 words. Thanks for all you do. And I was like, that handwriting looks familiar. It was mine. I didn't remember when I wrote the note, but it wasn't recent. I don't remember why I wrote the note, but it was valuable enough to the teacher that it occupied valuable real estate on her desk, on her computer, so that every time she looked at her computer, she saw that note. I got the idea from somebody, and I used Google Forms with Autocrat, so that when I would come through, every time I would leave, I would just take my phone outside, and I would do similar to the examples of what you said in terms of, hey, the wait time, and just pump them up, because you can find something positive in every time you walk through. I mean, just you've got to be able to find something. And the best example was once I walked through the lounge and two of my fifth grade teachers were sitting there who I had already walked through their classroom earlier. And I had it set up that when I did the form through, I don't know are you familiar with Autocrat?
No.
Okay. It's a add-on for Google Sheets that when you do a Google form, it's basically a mail merge for Google Forms. It automatically takes what you put in the form, merges it into a document, and it'll automatically email it to somebody. So I had set it up that it's like I had a walkthrough input form, and I would do it, and as soon as I hit submit, it put it into a nice little cute note and emailed it to the teacher. So teachers started to know, hey, if Brent walks through my class, in about 30 seconds, my computer is going to bing, and there's going to be a positive note on my computer about the walkthrough. And I walked through the lounge one day, and two of my teachers, one of them, Jennifer, said, hey, Brent, we didn't get our notes. and I said, I was like, what do you, and she's like, well, you walked, Casey and I were just saying, you walked through our classes and we didn't get our notes. And it's because I had gotten a call on the radio right after I'd left. I got sidetracked. But the greatest thing was they noticed.
Yeah,
like me walking through the classroom wasn't oh shoot, he's going to catch me doing something. It was more like, oh sweet, he's walking through my classroom. He's going to say something nice about what I'm doing. There's going to be, and when it was absent, they noticed and they called me out on it. So I think if we can do, and it doesn't have to be fancy like a Google form I mean, like you said, all it has to be is Post-it. That's all it has. It's all it has to be. Any other like practical of those 6 pillars that you think are worth sharing? I mean, I know all of think are worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all worth sharing, right? Yes. I guess one piece that's just to talk about. I'll share 2 quick things. One is about emotional safety, and I think a good place to start with that is to ask teachers in your school what might make a teacher feel unsafe here. And I have asked that. I can't say hundreds of times, but maybe 60 times or something as I travel and speak to different groups of educators. And almost always gossip and judgment. I ask them the question and they make a word cloud in response. And almost always the biggest word in the middle is gossip or judgment. Sometimes it's teacher evaluation, but even during COVID, even during, really obviously heightened concerns about school safety issues, still gossip and judgment are in the center of that word cloud. So then it begs the question of, okay, these things we have control and or influence over in our school. So then how can we make this a school that is free of gossip and judgment, or we can lessen gossip and judgment at the school so that teachers can feel safe? So that's one piece. As
you're saying that, I'm like jotting a note to myself, and I put 3 words like ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like just the fact that you will ask 60 plus times, like for a leader to be number one, transparent, vulnerable, but ask the question. If we want them to feel safe, ask them, what will make you feel safe? Or conversely, what is making you feel less than safe right now? And if we don't ask the question, how are we going to improve on what we're doing? So
right.
I love that.
In asking that, often we try to be positive, right, and optimistic, but I think it is really important to ask that question of what might make, and it's phrased that way purposefully because it's a little bit softer of a question. What might make a teacher feel unsafe at our school? The answers are anonymous, so we don't know who said what. Mm-hmm. When we produce a word cloud, I just use a tool like Mentimeter to do that. Yeah. And then, just even using the word like might, it just lands a little softer and allows us to, kind of trust the process and be a little bit more transparent and vulnerable as we give the answers.
And if a classroom teacher is listening to this right now, the same can be applied to the classroom. Ask your students, what might make someone in this class feel unsafe, or what might make you feel unsafe, or what could I do to make you feel safe? I mean, imagine a student getting their teacher, wow, she's asking me that, he's asking me that, and it's anonymous, so I can actually be honest. And I mean, talk about the power that you're putting in the hands of students. I love
right. And when we make a word cloud like that, what we're really creating is like a group definition. So then we make a group action plan based on that data that we get.
Yeah, I love that. You I think you said you had another one.
Yeah, I do, for healthy workload. So it's interesting because when I throw blog posts out there, and hundreds of blog posts on my blog, and some stick. You throw them out there and see if they stick to the wall like a piece of spaghetti. Some stick, and some don't. Like, nobody pays attention to them. And then it's interesting, like, 2 years later, all of a sudden, everybody's paying attention to it. But I threw blog posts out there about a healthy workload in teachers. And I got feedback, and they said, Allyson, like, I can grade papers at night. Like, I'm not so worried about that. What's really bothering me is the worry load that I have, that I'm carrying around on my shoulders every day. Which then we could use, a strategy like, what's on your worry list? And then really looking at, what do we have control over? What do we not have control over? What do we have influence over? What can we take off our worry list? What can we postpone from our worry list to narrow that down? But the other piece, when we look at healthy workload, is email is a beast. And, teachers maybe ignore it, or I don't blame them, because we're inundated with emails. So a couple recommendations. One is, don't ever email on the weekend. And it's amazing to me how many school leaders or central office people think, I'm sending email at 10 o'clock on Saturday night, and just because I say, I hope you're enjoying your weekend, and don't read this email until Monday, that's being considerate. Like, we know how to schedule emails, so let's schedule them to go out during work hours. And then the other piece of advice I would have, just on behalf of teachers for workload and email, is save up all the emails that you're tempted to forward to them, or you want to communicate. And if it can wait to your weekly newsletter, save them up for your weekly newsletter. And it's just respectful of teachers' time. And it also organizes them into a document they can easily find and access. But then also increases readership on your weekly update if you put meaty details in there that you haven't already communicated via email.
Yeah. I just that's going back to the being reflective on ourselves. Like, how can we, because I know that I've been guilty of it in the past, in terms of like, gosh, I want to check this off my list. And as soon as I send this, sweet, I just got to check that off my list. But what I've just done is, oh, great, I've added it onto my teacher's list. And I love what you said, like, I hope you're having a great weekend. Well, I was, until I opened my email and I saw that. And as much as we say, well, don't check your email on the weekend.
No, we check it.
The reality is, but what if they do? So it's right. Like, I mean, like you said, we have the ability to schedule the emails, or even oftentimes in my new role now that I'm supporting a lot of our administrators, I will put on my calendar during, like, block out a time, send this email, like during the work time at a time that would not be Friday afternoon at 4:30. Cause it's like, hey, have a nice weekend. Right before they head out. It's like trying to put that in. Again, I think there's still room for growth for me, but just having those, absolutely. But just, I love what you said, because it just makes us think about the people that we're leading. Is what I'm doing right now adding to their worry? And I jotted down, can we postpone some of those worries? Like,
right.
Some we can take off the plate. What can I take? Okay, I'm going to take that one from you. This one right now, let's not worry about that right now. Like, stick a pin in it. We'll come back to that one. I'm giving you permission to stick the pin, postpone it until later. That's the healthy workload is.
If one thing we learned from the pandemic is that life can change beyond our imagination in an instant. So let's not worry about future things right now, because for all we know, circumstances could change, and won't be a worry at all in the future.
And the other byproduct of it is kind of like it showed us what's really important.
Yes.
I mean, like all of a sudden, like all the stuff that used to be, oh my gosh, this is the most important thing, like you said, in the blink of an eye, suddenly wasn't the most important thing in the world.
Right.
Which
right.
I think that as much as none of us want to relive what we did over the last few years, there were some positives that came out of it in terms of reflective questions. Like you said, being able to look back and say, well, what is important? Family. Family is more important than work. And I think a lot of people, it forced them to see that. So, well, Allyson, I appreciate I say it every week, and anyone who listens to this podcast knows, Brent, you say that every time. Well, it's true. Even if nobody listens to this, I was edified by my conversation with you. So, but I do think that some people are going to listen to this and hopefully get something out of it. If they are like, tell me more, Allyson. You've mentioned a book, Allyson. Tell us how they can connect with you online, social media, and if they want to pick up your books, how can they do that?
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. It's been a joy to have this conversation with you. But I am available on the internet at AllysonApsey.com, and on all of the social medias. I'm just at Allyson Apsey. Try to keep it simple. You can email me at AllysonApsey@gmail.com. And all the books are available like on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So if you Google me, I even have like a TEDx talk out there. So lots of different ways to be connected. And I feel so like blessed, honored, thankful to be connected with incredible educators around the world through social media and different connections. So I would love to get connected with new educators too.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. In terms of social media has been believe me, there are a lot of ills of social media, and it has been used oftentimes in the wrong ways. But for me, it's been some of the best professional development I've had in nearly 3 decades in education. So, which is awesome. So, Allyson, thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate you doing that. And for everyone listening, check out Allyson's stuff. Again, like I said, I've followed her work for a long time, and I'm really happy to be able to speak with you. I was going to say in person, at least virtually.
It feels like we're in person.
Virtually in person. So thank you again, Allyson. And for everyone listening, thank you for taking the time. Again, if you haven't done so, you can subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can listen directly on my website at brentcoley.com. Be sure to check out AllysonApsey.com and her books on Amazon. And until next time, have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.